Welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. This is Sean, and today I want to talk to you guys about having a growth mindset. Now, this is something that I am not necessarily an expert at, but it is something that I try to incorporate into my own life day to day by bringing some different principles in. Now, what is a growth mindset? Well, the simplest answer to that is a mindset where you approach life looking for small incremental improvements instead of necessarily focusing on this overall larger picture. Now, what does that mean? It means, let's take an example. My daughter wants to learn how to cook. So I wake her up in the morning and say, hey, we're going to make some breakfast. So Ilani and I go upstairs. And when we go upstairs, she's starting from absolute zero. She doesn't know anything. So we go upstairs and we get out a pot, put the pot on the stove, start boiling water. Well, as we start boiling that water, she's learning new skills. Now, it might always be just like that, but today when we went upstairs to cook, we started off with learning how to cook some eggs. She didn't know how to crack the eggs. So I sat down and I started showing her how I crack the eggs. We cracked one, put it in. The next one she did. And she cracked the egg and it went everywhere. Literally went everywhere in the kitchen. And we slowed down and said, okay, it's not a problem. Let's take a step back and look at how we can do that again. And she did it again. I said, you need to be a little bit more careful and try to hold it from the bottom and break it apart. And she did that. And she progressed. She made a step forward. Now, we're going to talk more about how to approach life from that attitude of little steps forward that help us become better at what we're doing. One of the first things that you can do to have a growth mentality is to embrace challenges. Now, I know not a lot of people like to do this. It's tough to embrace the challenges in your life. I know that oftentimes we try to kind of avoid them because they can be overwhelming. They can leave us feeling kind of awful. But we can think of some fun scenarios to look at this and how it might actually help us to challenge these obstacles. Now, let's imagine that you have a student who says that I am bad at math. And every day that person says that they are bad at math. And that self-talk gets into their head so much that they start believing it. And they start acting upon that. They won't go near math. They won't try math classes. They won't do anything related to the topic because they're afraid of the type of punishment that might come in. But the reality is that maybe they need to push into it. Maybe they need to lean into it and then try to keep working through it. For myself, I am trying something new. I'm learning to code, which is something that's pushing me to the limits of what I thought I could do. Last night, I made my first website, which was essentially a picture with some text on an HTML file. And you know what? It was fun. It was awesome. It was something that was a step further than what I had done before. It intimidated me. I'm scared of computers and things like that. I just always have felt like I do not know what I'm doing. But I embraced that. And I stepped into it, and I feel like I'm growing because of it. Now, another example might be a runner that's always stuck to flat terrain. And they say, you know what? I can't handle hills. I can't handle mountains. But they want to become better at what they're doing. So what they do is they need to step back and go, all right, I'm intimidated by hills. I need to try a hill. And then they go at it. And that hill climb might be really challenging for them. But when they're done, they have leveled up to a degree. They have gotten better. And that is really important. It's important for us to push and challenge our boundaries because you never know what's on the other side of it. Often, what's on the other side of it is our own personal fulfillment, our own potential. But you have to push against those limitations, but you have to push back against those challenges that are holding you back. Now, here are some things that you can do. Instead of avoiding challenges, try to take them on with a positive attitude. Positive attitude goes a long way for moving past some of these obstacles. It can help us turn a seemingly challenging thing into something that's not so bad. Also, you can try to set realistic goals and break things down into manageable steps. This is a really good way to try to push through some of these obstacles. Sometimes it can seem like it's so big that it's really hard to get through it. And you just kind of feel overwhelmed and you give up halfway through. Set realistic expectations for yourself to make it easier to get through it. Most of all, use the opportunity as a challenge to learn and grow. Now, like I said, on the other side of this challenge is probably your potential. But if you don't try to push into it, if you don't try to get through it, you'll never know what you're capable of. So embrace the challenges life throws at you. Now, another way that we can have a growth mindset is to learn from mistakes. Now we all make mistakes, and some of us beat ourselves up more than others. But But actually, failing and making mistakes is a valuable part of success and growth. You can't know what you're going to achieve, and you can't correct yourself if you don't make mistakes. Now, those mistakes hopefully are not fatal, and hopefully they're not things that actually bring your whole world crashing down around you. But if they are little things that you can correct from and grow from, then it's a good thing. Now, imagine that you're in the kitchen and you're trying to make a new dish and you burn it and it smells awful. And you know what? You feel bad about that. The ingredients are ruined. Well, you can do two things. One, you can beat yourself up for it. Or two, you can learn from your mistakes. Realize, you know what? I might have set the oven too hot, or I might have cooked it too long. Those are things that actually you can act upon. Dichotomy of control, things that you can control, things that you can't. Now, learning from your mistakes is an important part of that, figuring out what you can control and changing that, and then moving on to your next step. Now, another great example would be an athlete who loses at a competition. Now, they might be beating themselves up, going, why didn't I train hard enough? Why didn't I do this? But the reality is it might be none of those things. Maybe it's something else. Now, if they can take a step back and analyze what they did wrong and learn from their mistakes, the next time they're much less likely to make that same mistake again. And that is a growth mentality. It means looking at things in a way that allows us to learn and grow. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be taking steps forward. Now, instead of dwelling on mistakes, it's best to think about what might have gone wrong and analyze that and think how we can change and do things differently the next time around. This is a really great tool to actually look at things. Now, it's not just about making the mistake and trying again. It's about making the mistake, analyzing, figuring out what went wrong, and then fixing it. And that's what learning from mistakes is all about. It's about the change that we get from analyzing. It's about the change that we get from self-analysis, and that is important. Now, the next step is to make sure that you make a plan to avoid similar mistakes in the future. If you make a mistake and you're not correcting it and making a plan to plan for that mistake and that problem in the future, then you're not learning. Now, if you burn your food, then you better set a timer the next time you cook something to make sure that you take the food out at the right time. Now, if you're not doing that and then you burn it again, then you're not really learning from your mistakes. Number 3, this was one I really liked for having a growth mentality. Practice persistence. Now, what does that mean? A good example would be the Colonel. Colonel Sanders founded KFC. Now, this man went around and pitched his restaurant, pitched his fried chicken over 1,000 times before someone finally came along and said yes. J.K. Rowling pitched Harry Potter to numerous publishing houses, and they all said no. There have been a number of ideas like this. I was reading yesterday about Tom Petty. Tom Petty had his first album that he had written, and it had some of his most famous songs, and his record label said, we don't want this. But he persisted. He kept going, and he was able to release something that was awesome. Now, this happens in our own lives. We butt up against walls, and we don't know how to get through them. And what do you have to do? You have to keep pushing. You have to keep trying, because on the other side of that is what you really want. It is your success. It is your potential. And that's what I'm all about, finding out how we can get to our potential. But we hit that wall, and persistence is one of the things that can help us get to the other side. Now, one of the things that you can do, instead of giving up at the first sign of difficulty, keep trying to push forward. This doesn't mean running and battering your head against a wall, but it does mean that if this obstacle is only temporary, continue on. Keep going, because you can get there. Think about a musician who the first time they try to play a song, they don't sound very good. But you know what? If they keep working at it, they will eventually get it. But you have to practice. And this is what persistence is all about. It's about that repetition. It's about continuing to go when you don't think you can. Because if you do, you'll get to the other side. Now, another thing that's important to do is to visualize your end goal. Think about why this is important to you. Now, for me, I'm learning coding right now. I'm making these videos. I'm doing all these different things, including building my daughter's YouTube channel, my wife's, and my own, because I have an end goal in sight. It's tough to wake up some days and to do all this, but I have this vision of something that's bigger and better for my family. It's a place that I want to be, and that helps motivate me to keep going. Now, whatever it is for you that motivates you, you have to embrace that. You have to keep going through that. Last of all, celebrate the small wins. Now, we don't always win all the time, but when you do, you need to celebrate that, even if it's something as simple as completing an assignment. For me, I watched a video today about HTML. Now, that was something new for me, but it was fun, and I completed it. I opened up the software that they told me to, and I did what they said. And it was a little win. I got a picture of my dog on the screen with a caption and a title. But that was my first website. And I'm really proud of that. Now, I don't know where this is going to take me, but I am embracing the little wins and embracing the journey. That is a growth mentality. Another thing that we can do to have a growth mindset is to embrace effort. Now, this is that 10,000 hour rule. Anything that's worth achieving takes time. It takes energy. If you want to become a great musician, I'm sorry, this is not the Matrix. You can't upload suddenly a file and you're a great musician. You have to practice. Practicing is what it's all about. You need to put in the time. You need to put in the effort. You need to put in the energy. And this is something that takes attention. This is something that takes effort. Doesn't have to be difficult. Doesn't have to be something horrible, but it does take energy. And that energy is effort. Now, I'm a big fan of gamifying things. I love, for my daughter, as she's learning piano, we have an app that makes it fun for her to play piano. For me, I'm trying to learn to be a better typer, and my daughter as well. And so we pull up games that we can play that make it fun. Now, these are things that we can do. What can you do to make your effort fun? Because I don't like just pushing for pushing's sake. But if you can find ways to engage yourself and make it fun, then the effort becomes easier. But you have to put in the effort. I have to record these videos. This is something I do to gain success on my channel. And every week I put a new one up. That is effort. You can achieve something too, but you have to put in the work. Number 6, embrace feedback. Now, this is one that's hard for many of us. We don't like to be told what to do. We don't like to be told what we're doing wrong. Both of these can be really challenging, but the reality is sometimes other people can see better than we can what mistakes we're making or how we're doing something wrong. Now, there is oftentimes a level of judgment that comes with that as well, and that can be tough. But the reality is, if you can kind of filter out the stuff that is not helpful and keep the things that are, you're going to get valuable information that can help you become better. This is a growth mindset. Imagine the basketball player who's shooting the ball, and yet it's not going in. So they go and see a shooting coach, and the shooting coach says, you need to change the position of your hands. And they do that, and they get better. Now, someone else might come along and that coach tells them the same advice and they don't change and they don't necessarily improve because they're not open to the feedback. And this is where you have to be open to the feedback that's coming your way. So no matter what you're doing, embrace that feedback that's coming to you. I love this next one. Cultivate curiosity. Now, what does cultivate curiosity mean? It means be curious about the world around you. I, for one, am absolutely fascinated by this big, wonderful world that we're part of. I am studying coding right now. Why? Because it's interesting to me. I'm a huge fan of the Matrix, and our entire digital world is written on code. It's this language, or these groups of languages, that are used to create this network of connectivity of all of these devices around the world. Now, that is fascinating to me. It's fascinating that it's even possible that this network of cables around the globe are this thing that allow us to communicate so blazingly fast. That's my curiosity. And that curiosity inspired me to want to learn something new. It's a growth mentality. Now, maybe you're curious about how engines work, or maybe you're curious about why animals digest a certain way, whatever it might be. Cows have a really interesting stomach system. Look it up sometime. Now, whatever it is that you are curious about, dig into it and find ways to kind of foster that curiosity. Because if you do, you're going to be more interested in learning and growing because of it. Now, last of all, focus on growth. Now, this is pretty easy to say when we're talking about a growth mindset, but focusing on growth is a really important thing. How so? Well, imagine an entrepreneur who is dealing with the failure of his company. This person's company's failed. Now, he or she can either wallow in self-doubt, or they can sit there and begin to step back and begin to look at what went wrong. They can start to analyze where they failed and what they can do differently, because this will allow them to be ready for when they go back at it. And they will. They will try again, or at least they should. And when they do, they will be ready to change and be better the next time around. And now this is the same thing for any of us, whether that be learning to ride a bicycle, whether that be learning to play piano, whether that be just talking to people you don't know, whatever it might be. When you succeed, keep going at it. But when you fail, don't worry, regroup and go again. And remember this, celebrate each step along the way, because each step is beautiful, each step is priceless, and each step is awesome. Now, don't forget that if you keep working, what is out there is your potential. It's the you that you would love to be if you realize that putting in the work is awesome and it means something. So I hope today that you guys feel motivated and keep trying. I think that if all of us hit our potential, it makes the world a better place. I hope you guys are having a beautiful day, and I'll see you next week.